Montana, welcome to the Take Flight podcast.
Thank you. I'm honestly honoured to be here. So thank you for having me.
No, thanks for doing it. Where are you at the moment?
Don't hate me, but I am in Barbados.
Oh, amazing.
No, I'm having a really nice time. I didn't plan on coming for that long. I came out for Christmas and then everything kind of happened at home and I made the choice to stay here. And now it's been like 3 months. So I'm coming home soon.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm just going to pretend that you're not in Barbados, I think, just for my own sake. I love it there. My brother actually, I think it's about 4 years ago now, but he rode the Atlantic from Gran Canaria to Barbados. So I went out to meet him. So that was the first time I ever went, and I've been back once since, luckily. But yeah, what a place.
It's amazing. It has been incredible. It's very much island life, though. It's not like being in Europe. I feel like they have a lot more structure with things, whereas in Barbados, they do call it like Bayesian time. Like everyone's late. No one's got any concept of time here, which in some ways is nice, but I think if you want to get things done, not so nice.
Yeah. After a while, you're like, okay, can I go back to the madness of London, please?
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks again for doing it. We met on Clubhouse. We were just talking about that then before. In fact, I think you were in like one of the first rooms that I went into, and
really,
yeah, like really early on, and I can't even remember what the room was about, but it had Alex in again, who we spoke about, and Maya. Do you work with Maya?
Yes.
Right.
No, well, I actually remember that now because it was my first time on Clubhouse and I kind of logged on and I wasn't aware of anything to do with Clubhouse. I'd literally just got it the day before. Next thing you know, I've been pulled up to the stage, didn't know what that was at the time either. Oh, Montana, how you doing? And I was honestly on the toilet at the time. I was like, hi, everyone. Like thinking like, oh my fucking God, how do I get off of this? How do I get off the stage? And it was awful because I didn't realise that you could get up there so quickly or people can invite you up and then they can just address you.
Yeah, I've had times when it's like you just log in and they bring you up to stage. You're like, oh, now I'm in like a 2-hour Clubhouse room, just waiting to answer a question. That's so funny though, because I was going to say, from that moment, you came across incredibly endearing and very articulate. So it's interesting that you're actually on the toilet.
Literally, I just wish someone had been a fly on the wall in that moment because I was like, "Back, how do I get over this now?" And to be honest, at that point, I think because it was at the start of like when I was experiencing Clubhouse, I thought you have to be really polite and just kind of stay on the stage, not leave because someone's invited you because it's rude. And now I'm just like, yeah, sod this, I'm leaving.
Yeah, you have to, don't you? Protect your time a little bit. But honestly, like from listening to you, and I've been in a few of the ones that you've been speaking in now, you come across amazingly well. Like you really are endearing. How I think we'll talk about this in more depth later, but just like incredibly authentic. And I don't want that just to be chucked around as like a word that a lot of people say nowadays. You have to be authentic, but like really genuinely feel like you're just being yourself, and it's really nice.
Oh, thank you. I think it's definitely something that has taken me a while because I think being thrust into the limelight, trying to navigate what your identity is going to be is quite difficult because I think at 20 years old as well, your identity is kind of changing anyway. But that and the combination of being slightly in the limelight but not really is a really difficult balance to hit. So I'm glad someone's noticed. I've done a lot of self-work in the last year.
Have you? Interesting. What
Yeah.
have you been doing?
I think I was really struggled to find myself. I know like everyone says like gap year and like finding myself. But like I think I really struggled with who I wanted to be. And I think ever since I've grown up, like I came from quite a broken family. It was just my mum that brought me up and very estranged from my dad. And I think I definitely always seeked having like a nuclear family. So for me, like growing up, I was always wanting to be in like a really healthy, like really amazing relationship because I thought that's what's gonna fulfill me. That's what's gonna make me feel complete. But if I get into a relationship. So I think that's something that I was always really focused on, like just somebody to love me. And then I think I got into like quite a long-term relationship and it wasn't particularly healthy. And I think I had such an issue with splitting up and not being in a relationship. I think that was like one of my big focuses because I think I lost my identity in the relationship because so much of myself was being in a relationship, like being a girlfriend. And I think without that, I struggled to find purpose. So that's definitely something in the last year that I've really kind of worked on, and teaching myself that it's fine to be on your own, and you are enough on your own, and you can be with someone, you can be single, and you will still be, or you should be, kind of intrinsically happy. And that's been such an amazing journey for me in the past year of reparenting myself and
Hmm.
showing myself self-love and kind of meditating and writing down affirmations and gratitudes. It's been like such a learning experience, and I'm really, really grateful.
Hmm. That's music to my ears. I'm going to ask you about every single one of those things you just said. Do you think that I relate to a lot of what you said? Do you think that when you come from a broken home, or maybe like a less stable home, that's why you seek that like relationship, because you really want the kind of security, that foundation that makes you feel okay? And like you said, you seek love, that feeling of like, okay, someone cares about me. I know where I stand now, like with at least one person.
Yeah, I think you've literally hit the nail on the head. I think it was so hard because I love my mum to bits, but she was consistently working. She was obviously trying to work her hardest to bring me up all by herself. So I was often with childminders or
Mm.
at friends' houses, and I really lacked that structure of having a consistent person in my life growing up. Obviously, my mum was always there, but I think day to day, um, it was always kind of quite up and down. So I think I was reading this kind of article from the holistic psychologist, and she was talking all about reparenting and saying you need to give yourself what you never had as a child. And I think one of those things is I've always craved having a nuclear family, as I said before. So I think I've always seeked that in somebody else. And obviously, because I watched my mum kind of not being with anybody when I was younger, I think that also kind of added to me craving that as well growing up.
Mm.
But it has been such an amazing life lesson. I think also as a woman, you do kind of get conditioned to think that, oh, you're not engaged yet, or you don't have a boyfriend, and you always kind of have your aunties at any wedding or any kind of
Mm.
family event, like, you're still single. I'm like, yes, I am. Thank you for asking. So it is like this external pressure of your biological clock and people kind of asking if you're in a relationship and if you're on your way, and then it is quite a difficult thing to navigate. But I think it is so important as a woman to know who you are, know who you want to be, and that's aside from being in a relationship, being a mum, like being a colleague, it's finding out who you want to be and what you want to be known for and how you want people to know you. Because I think
Mm.
I've never worked with myself before in such a in-depth and personal way. It's I think at the start I found it very uncomfortable. Even just doing gratitudes and affirmations, I used to find very deeply uncomfortable, um, because I used to find that I would get judgment from some of my friends that are no longer my friends. And it's finding the right circle of people who can support you in whatever you want to do, whether that's doing your affirmations and gratitudes. A lot of people are not that open minded with regards to mindset because they just think, oh, well, it doesn't mean anything. It's not going to help you. So it's also finding that necessarily your friends that you've known for the longest period might not be your friends when you're a proper adult either, and that's another hard lesson as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest. It's funny we're talking about this. I was thinking about this the other day. I've been doing a lot of thinking as well recently. I think
I
it's,
have to.
yeah, too much time stuck at home. I think, well, not you. You're on the beach, aren't you? But but I wonder, like, it's funny when we grow. Naturally, we're going to grow, and actually, then I ask even more questions about when we grow and develop and become better people. But then, do we? Can anyone ever truly change? And I go in down a bit of a rabbit hole. But it's funny when because we do grow or change at least what we want to do at times. But then when you see those old friends that you had from decades ago, how quickly you flip into that version of yourself that you were either at school or whatever it is, and it's I don't know what it is, some sort of trigger that just brings that side of you out again, which I don't know. I just a random thought that I was having the other day.
No, I think there are certain people that bring out certain traits in you, um, and I think the one thing that I've learned, especially in the past couple of years, is it's not having the best people around you. It's not having the nicest people around you. It's not about having the most successful people around you. It's about having the people around you that make you the best version of yourself.
Mm.
And because I have tried to be somebody else when with other people, and I think I've tried to be a certain version of myself that isn't necessarily authentic because I think that's what they want me to be. And I think it's about finding yourself and what you enjoy doing and somebody bringing out the best in you, and it will take that for you to see the difference in your different friends, and just sticking with that and knowing that they love you authentically and that nothing will ever break that friendship because they appreciate you for you. And it might be different, they might not write their gratitudes and affirmations, but they still want to ask you questions about it and think, yeah, that's amazing, like I really admire you for that. I think I'm super, super lucky because the friends that I have are just ridiculous. They are phenomenal friends. And I mean, just to give you an example, when I took over my company, um, when I was the sole owner, my friend Molly, that literally lives 5 minute walk away, she hand wrote me a letter and posted it to me, just saying how proud she was of me. And I think it's little stuff like that where I think, God, like I had people in my life a couple of years ago who would never have even dreamed of doing things like that, or even just picking up the phone, and you realize that you have these one-sided relationships where you're there kind of giving all your energy to all these people. And I think I've always been a very sociable person. So I've always loved having loads of different groups of friends, probably again, like because I came from quite a small household, a small family. Um, but now I'm kind of slowly but surely finding like my smaller circle of really incredible people that I value and that they bring a lot of value to my life.
It's so good to hear. Can I ask, you mentioned before about how you've almost got a slightly different identity now than what you had in your early 20s. How old are you now, by the way?
I'm 25.
25. Wow. And
Mm,
you're already talking about all this. It's amazing.
thank
Um,
you.
who would you say you are today then? I know that's a very tough question, I'm sure, to answer, but if you could answer it or articulate it in any way, who would you say that you are today?
I think who I am today is somebody who is very self aware, very empathetic, and very grounded. I think if you'd have asked me this 3 or 4 years ago, I was very self absorbed. I came off of a show where I thought the only important thing was my looks. Um, I just honestly, I was such a diva. Like, I look back and I proper cringe at some of my behavior. I don't think any of my friends would have necessarily noticed these small changes, but it's definitely on self reflection. I just remember saying stuff like, "Oh my God, I can't believe my Addison Lee's late. How fucking rude!" Like all of this stuff, and I just remember. I look back, honestly, it makes me die inside. And just little stuff where I look back, I'm like, who on earth did I think I was? And I think I spoke about this on Clubhouse the other day. I was not the best looking at school or in secondary school, and I never really thought I was that attractive. Um, and I was never like the one that all the boys fancied. And I think I never cared at the time, but I think that was quite a hard transition for me because when went on this TV show, it was all about my looks, and I never really valued myself based on my looks ever. I always just valued myself because I was sociable, I was fun to be around, um, I was always up for doing things, and I was just quite spontaneous. And those are the things I really valued. I think growing up that I knew I was a good person, I knew I was a good friend because I was always kind to people, and I used to sit with people at lunch if they were sat on their own. And those are the kind of things that I really valued. And then I kind of went on this show and everything was about how you looked. And I saw everyone was getting Botox, everyone was getting filler. And I thought, oh, maybe I should be getting that. Maybe I need to get better looking and then I'll get more jobs. So I remember I actually, when I was 21, I went to this clinic and I showed them a picture of this girl who she wasn't an influencer. I think she's just like a celebrity from the US. And I said, I want cheeks like that and I want my chin to look like that. And someone was like, okay, we'll give you some filler. And I think I was 20 or 21, and she gave me these massive cheekbones, and I had this massive chin. Um, and I felt so low after that. Um, I changed my hair blonde as well. I think I was really struggling to find this attractiveness about myself, and I was like, oh, I'm not good enough, and I never felt worthy enough to just be naturally beautiful. And I thought that that came from getting lots of work done because I was kind of surrounded by people who it was so normal to get plastic surgery, filler, Botox, everything. Um, I mean, it's really hard to look back because I was so unhappy with the way that I was. I think part of that was I was in an unhealthy relationship, so I was seeking validation through like other things. Um, so I think how long after? I think it was 3 months after I got all this filler and this Botox. I mean, I saw myself on television when I was on television at the time, and I like would cry because I looked so much older than I was, and I was so unhappy with the way I looked. And I thought it would solve all my problems. I thought it would give me this inner confidence, and I thought it would make me feel amazing. And really, like, it crumbled me from within, because I thought, oh my God, I look so old. People were picking up on it. So I was getting trolled on my appearance as well, which really, really I found very difficult. And then it was only until I got it dissolved and I stopped getting anything Botox fillers, then I actually felt way more confident in myself.
It's thanks so much for being so honest, by the way, with that. It's hard enough for ourselves to know, like, truly who we are anyway, let alone when, we do things like that because we think other people want us to do that, or we
Mm,
think that's what we should look like or act like or behave like, or that's who we should be. I speak about this with my coaching clients, who are largely people who are in the public eye, or athletes who are, in scrutinized weekly for their performance. And it's about
mm,
understanding the internal version, like our true self, which is what you explained there so nicely about, you go and sit down with the person who sat on their own. Like, I felt that when you said that. It's really sweet. Like, just because you felt for them, that's empathy again. You said that, you're empathetic. That's your true self. That's who you really are. But then the battle that we have every single day is to not be impacted by the external, like the world that tries to tell us who we are. And the world, in
mm.
your case, then, because you were thrust into the limelight, was telling you, you need to look like this, you need to behave like this, you need to talk like this and act like this, and moan when your Addison Lee's late.
Honestly, it's so embarrassing. Like, I do look back and think, oh God, like, I would not have wanted to work with me. I remember, I'll tell you another story because I just think it's so funny. Probably gonna get a slam for this, but I think it's so important to know that if you go on a show like Love Island, just stay grounded and keep your school friends, for God's sake. I went to this photo shoot, and this brand was paying me lots and lots of money to do like a day's worth of photo shoot. So probably should have been about 6 hours. I used to turn up, and within like the first 20 minutes, I'm like, right, I have to leave in an hour and a half. And they'd be like, "Oh, we thought you were going to be here all day." I was like, "No, I don't want to be here all day." I'd be like, "I'm only going to be here for an hour and a half, and I'd like some lunch as well." Like, honestly, and my agent reminded me of that the other day, and I was like, "Oh my God, what on earth?" Like, what a little madam! Like, at 21, I think I would have loved to just wallop myself around the face, like, at that point, in reflection. But it is terrible, like, what that can do to you, especially when you're that young. I think you're just super impressionable, and it's not something that I was aware of, until literally, I think my massive epiphany moment was when my friend passed away and committed suicide, and I started researching into mental health. That was honestly the lowest point of my life, but I honestly feel like it completely changed the way I am now, and it's allowed me to really strip back and put everything into perspective, which is that we are all so blessed and lucky, um, just to have a roof over our head, just to be happy when we wake up in the morning, because a lot of people don't even have that. And that was a real journey for me, because I mean, I'd never suffered with mental health problems before I kind of came off of the show. But I'd never had depression ever. It's not something that is hereditary. It's not in my family. But oh God, I was so unhappy, and I had no idea how to kind of get myself out of this hole, because I also felt a bit empty before any of that happened.
Mm.
So to come out of that at such a time where I did feel like my heart was broken, um, it was a really difficult time.
It's funny, isn't it? Because it's like, either you can get yourself out of that either with situations, like you said, like, you start to change the people around you and change your environment and everything else, or events that happen to you, although they seem really, really dark at the time, you can get positive from it because it takes you somewhere and you have to learn about yourself, or through practices. And you spoke about the gratitudes and, your morning journaling and all that sort of stuff. I'd love to come back and talk a little bit more about what you did in the last year, like tangible things that you did in the last year that other people could try and what works for you. And I'd also love to come back and talk about, you mentioned your friend who committed suicide as well later on, if that's okay. You talked about Love Island. Can we dive into that bit now?
Of course we can.
Yeah. Because I
Yeah, ask
think,
me anything you want.
all right, I think, first of all, I'd love to just know what motivated you to go on it, and then what the process was like of getting on there.
Okay, so like I said, I never really pictured myself as like the it girl. I was never the it girl at school. I was still popular, but it was more because I was good at sports. So I went out into London, and at this point, I was not a big drinker at all. Like when I was 17, 18, 19, I barely drank any alcohol. I just was not fussed by it at all. I don't actually know where that came from, but I always used to drive my friends into London, just drink like water and just drive back home. It just never used to faze me. So I'd driven my friends into London. We'd gone to Libertine. We'd get all glammed up, and two random people came up to me in the club and said to me, "Oh, we're researchers for Love Island. Like, you should come in and audition tomorrow. You should come in for a chat with us." And I honestly would cut stuff. I was like, "Me?" They were like, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I don't really think that I'm the person you're looking for." I was like, I don't really drink. I'm a bit boring." And they're like, "No, no, no. You should come in and interview." And I thought, nah. And I
Mm.
didn't even tell my friends that evening. I told them in the morning because we all stayed at mine that night. And I said, "It's so weird. This researcher came up to me last night and said that I should apply for Love Island." And my friends even thought it was absurd because they were like, "You, Mrs. Chamber Choir wears her kilt below her knee. You." Um, so they were like, "Just do it." They were like, what have you got to lose? Like, if you might as well just go in." So I did. I went in and I auditioned, and the first interview is a group interview. So you're with about six other girls all in one room, and then they pull you out one by one, take pictures of you, take videos, and kind of ask you questions like, "How do you describe yourself in 3 words?"
Hmm.
And so I kind of went all through the interviewing process, which I was just kind of being myself and saying that I didn't really drink that much and I loved sports, so I was kind of talking about that, and I was kind of saying how I I never really was the person to get really drunk and get with loads of boys, and wasn't something that ever really happened in my friendship group. And then it happened. I got a call, I think, literally 2 or 3 weeks before I was going on the show, and I'll be honest, I did not think I was getting on the show. I just thought, no way, like there's going to be other people who are a lot more like fun and a lot more kind of wild because I'd watched things like Geordie Shore and X on the Beach
Mm.
and even the Love Island from before, and it's all very kind of explosive. There's big arguments on there, and I hate arguing with people. Um, Especially like I don't think I've ever had like a shouting argument with somebody. Um, and so I just didn't really think it was in the cards for me. And the executive Lewis called me and said, "Yeah, you're going to be on the main lineup in 3 weeks." I was like,
Hmm.
and I hadn't actually thought about going on it or what it would be like because I just never thought I was going to get on it in the first place. I didn't really tell that many people because I thought I don't think I'm going to get it. So when he said that, I was like, shit. I was like, I need to either get myself sorted, and I was really kind of conflicted whether to go or not. Um, because one, I think I thought my confidence was going to be an issue. I was very confident in my own skin, but I just kind of knew that there were going to be people who were different to me on the show, and I was worried about people like arguing all the time and like people shouting at me. And I knew that I would hate that because I'm not used to that kind of confrontation at all. But I had a YOLO moment. I had a YOLO moment, and I just went, and it seemed to do all right.
Had a yellow moment. I'm not sorry about it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm not mad about it, but
That's awesome. So I, I heard you talk in the room about one of the interviews that they asked you to say something about the.
can you believe that? Can you
Can,
believe
can you
that?
explain
Should I
what
tell the
happened? Because
story?
yeah, because when you said it, I
It
was
is
just
quite
like,
funny.
"That's ridiculous."
I mean, it's funny in hindsight, and I never thought anything of it, but I think, especially being so young, I can't even tell a story. It's so funny. I think being so young, this is another thing. I was so naive. I think when I went on this show, I was so naive. You assume that when you're kind of 18, 19, 20, anyone who's older than you, what they say is just right. What they say is just Bible, and you learn to trust adults. I think it just comes from when you're a child.
Mhm.
You just know that adults, they do the right thing, they're honest, and what they tell you to do is normally in your best interest. So I was in my first kind of filming day, and I remember having hair and makeup, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, like someone's actually going to do my hair for me. This is amazing. And I remember this woman was like, "I think we're going to slick it back." And I remember being like, I hate my hair being slicked back. I hated having my hair down. I was such a tomboy. I used to just live in gym clothes. My hair was always up in a bun, like it is now. Um, and she was like, oh, she's gonna have my hair down and slick back. And I remember looking in the mirror, hating what my hair looked like, and I felt so uncomfortable that I just thought in my head, I'm not saying anything. I just come across really rude. I'm just gonna suck it up. Like, who's really gonna see it? Because at the time I was kind of oblivious to the fact that wait, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are gonna see this. And so I'm sat in the chair, and the producer's like, okay, so just introduce yourself. So I'm like, hi, I'm Montana. I'm 20 and I'm from Hertfordshire. And they were like, say something about you, graduating from university. You're obviously very intelligent. Why don't you say that you graduated with a BJ honors? It'd be so funny. Like, the crowd will get going. It'll be hilarious. I remember sat in this chair with all these lights, and there's so many people around being like, I don't want to say that. They're like, no, go on, it'd be so funny. And then like there was a couple of more people like, yeah, it'd be so funny. And I remember thinking in my head, my mum is not gonna find this funny. Like, my grandma and my granddad are not gonna find that funny. And I remember being like, guys, I feel really uncomfortable saying that. I'm not saying it. So they kind of moved on. But I think looking back, imagine if I'd have said that on
Mm.
TV. Just imagine. And the thing is, though, once it's out there, it's out there. Like, my kids would probably get bullied at school for that. I don't have kids, but I'm just saying hypothetically when
Yeah.
I do have kids.
What do you think the difference was between, maybe it's just time and the amount of exposure that you had, and the kind of the pressures of being a public figure from then, but what was the difference between them saying that to you and you standing, sort of being true to yourself and saying like, no, I'm not saying that's ridiculous, versus the you who you said felt like you needed to have fillers and all these other things that happened down the line?
See, I think the whole fillers journey was more because I was unhappy with the way I looked. And it was very much appearance based. Because I feel like that was where my value was. Whereas I think when I was kind of sat in the chair, I've always been very happy disappointing people, in the sense of if it's going to go against what I believe in. For example, I never used to drink, and the amount of people that used to be, oh, you're so boring, oh, you're so old, like, what are you doing, like, why don't you do a shot with us? And I just used to be like, yeah, okay, I don't care. Like, if you feel the need to make me feel bad about not drinking, then that's on you.
Yeah.
And I've always been very like that. So I think that really was great for me at the time, because I think I could have quite easily just said it, to get them to stop kind of pressuring me to say that. Um, but I think it's really difficult, because that's why I feel bad for people who get trolled on the show when they're 18 to 21, or even 18 to 25, and you just say things in the moment that you don't mean. I mean, I called someone ugly on television from the show, and I got really badly trolled for it, and I just made a mistake. You said something because you have to be entertaining on these shows, and you're paid to be entertaining and to be controversial, and I took it a step too far. I called someone ugly, and I felt horrendous, and it was everywhere. And I remember loads of new, like, papers were writing about it, saying that I was horrible, and I just remember feeling terrible, because I thought, you shouldn't call people ugly. It was a terrible thing to say. I said it in the heat of the moment, but now I'm genuinely was not allowed to forget it for about 6 months, because people were messaging me about it. And it's just a learning curve, because you just have to make all your mistakes publicly, unfortunately, like when you go on a show like that, because everything's recorded and everything's televised.
I think that it's so interesting hearing the story, because what came to my mind is people like Fern Cotton, who has literally been in the industry her whole life. She's been that's almost her education, was like going to the different, what was it, Mickey Mouse Club or whatever, and then different things like onto TV, onto radio, and so she knows how to be famous. Whereas
Mm,
people who go on shows like Love Island, they're not prepped, they're not, they're not educated on how to behave. In fact, probably more, that's the reason it's popular, because people don't realize the impact it's going to have on their lives. So they're thrust into this thing which is more popular than most TV that's out there anyway, and they've got to deal somehow with that when they leave. Because when you're in there, I mean, I'd love to hear what your experience was like, but when you're in there, you don't know the impact you're having outside, right? You don't know how it's being
yeah,
received. And then as soon as you leave, then that's when you get the kind of onslaught of feedback.
exactly. That's exactly how it is. And I remember, like, to be honest, I probably even shouldn't be saying this, but I think it is important that, again, like, because my mum wasn't there all the time when I was younger, but because I'm biracial, and I remember waking up one morning, and I basically, the common theme for the first 2 weeks of me being on that show, I kept saying racial slurs about myself. Um, but they'd be like, Montana, can you come to the beach hut? And they would say, Montana, you cannot say that kind of stuff, it's completely racist. And I was like, yeah, but it's about myself. And they were like, still, they were like, some of our cast members might be of that race and you might be offending them. Like, you need to be really
Mm.
careful about what you're saying. And I had never thought about it before that. And it was a real eye opener, because I think one thing that I think is really good about the show is that they could have showed me saying the word chinky, for example, and that is a word that I used, because I remember I woke up and my eyes were really swollen. I could barely see out of them. I was like, oh my God. I was like, my eyes look really chinky. And I am actually quarter Japanese. So, it is like, it's better than obviously if you're not Japanese or you're not Asian. But it was like an education thing. And they would imagine if they put that on television,
Mm.
which they would never. And I hand on heart do believe they are good people that run that show, because they would never put something out there like that would be detrimental to somebody's career. Um, and to be honest, a lot of the shows don't do that. They don't protect you from things that you say and mistakes that you make. But I think they do. They do try, and they do protect you in some way with making mistakes. And they say, you shouldn't do that, and you shouldn't say that. And I think that was a really good part of the show, that they do allow you to make mistakes, and they do understand that you are young and that you are going to say things that potentially you don't mean or you don't understand the weight of,
Mm.
and they educate you in that way, and that's really important. And they say you can't say things like that, and I think that's something that's a good thing about that show.
It's really good to hear that. Did you enjoy your time on there?
I honestly loved it.
Did you?
But yeah, I honestly had the best time of my life. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity that I would always recommend to people. I remember the Kaz, actually, who was on the year after me. I met her before she went on the show, and she was at an event that I was at, and she was like, "Oh my God, hi!" And she was asking me for a picture, and she actually asked me, "Do you think I should go on Love Island Live?" Been asked to go on. I said, "Do it." I was like, "Absolutely do it. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Grab it with both hands, because you just won't regret it. Just keep your friends around you,
Mm.
and you'll be great." Because it is a once in a lifetime opportunity. The opportunities and the money and the things that you can do from that point of having that many followers is exponential, and you have the opportunity to make a real change in people's lives. And don't get me wrong, not everybody uses it for that. Um, but I think you're in such a powerful position when you come off of that show, because people are invested in you. It's not like these kind of sporting people or musicians, or people don't like you because you're good at sports or you're good at rugby or you're good at playing the guitar or you're good at songwriting. People like you because they like your personality. They buy into you as a person,
Mm.
um, which is where I think the power lies.
I think in any deal that's ever been done, people are always buying into the person as much as the product or service or whatever else as well. So yeah, I think that's 100% agree with you. Is fame what you expected it to be?
So I didn't know that I was going to be famous in some capacity. Um, I remember because I asked my two friends from university to look after my Instagram account. And I was like, yeah, I'll be happy with because I mean, I had 400 followers before I went on. And I thought, yeah, I'll be happy with like a couple of thousand followers. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Hmm.
And then I also thought that I would go back to a normal job, to be honest, because I would just graduated. So I thought, oh, I'm going to have a job. I thought I'd have a job at GSK. That was the plan. And I came off, and I just remember thinking, what in God's name is this? And I remember being at the airport, at Palmer Airport, when I'd left the show. People were beside themselves. People were shouting, screaming, crying. And I remember I found it really anxiety inducing,
Mm.
because you feel like people are staring at you. And at the time, I had no idea why, because it hadn't even entered my mind that people had been watching the show, because it feels like you're just living with a bunch of people in a house. You forget the cameras are there. A lot of them are hidden cameras. You just forget that you're on a show. So kind of going out into the real world, I think fame was something that I never ever thought was going to be in my journey. Um, and my stepmom always said to me, "You're going to be famous one day," and I never agreed with her, because I thought, no, 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 that's not going to be my fate. And it's made me really cherish my home friends, my friends that I've been friends with for years and years and years. Don't get me wrong, I've met some wonderful people in the industry, influencers, kind of celebrities. Um, but the people that really kind of inspire me day to day are my school friends. My best friend is a school teacher, and she's so successful in her own right. And they would never even dream of getting Botox. They'd never even dream of getting filler, or they're just they're honestly just the best quality people. They're so down to earth. They've got the nicest hearts. They're just beautiful people. And my other best friend, Kat, just so down to earth. They're such good people. They do not have a bad bone in their body, and it's having those people around you makes you realize what being a good person means. And it's not having the most expensive things, like it's not having the most perfect hair, like it's not looking amazing all the time. It's like doing charity work, and it's just being an amazing friend to people who are in your life, and it's being a pillar for other people in your life as well, and just making people feel good about themselves by just being nice and spreading kindness.
That's amazing. I absolutely love that. It's funny how I mean, I'm not surprised at all. It's why I really wanted to speak to you, but how articulately you speak about that, and how much you're not just saying it, like you really understand it. And I can sense that when you're saying it. I think a pattern, perhaps, if I start to look back at the other people I spoke to, when you're thrust into fame, you learn these things because you've experienced it. You've experienced very high highs and realize actually what I thought was important wasn't as important as maybe I imagined or once thought. And like Jim Carrey, I can't remember exactly what the quote was, but everyone should be famous to realize that's not what it's all about, or along those lines. And I think it's amazing. You've obviously lived that. I mean, it's a blessing really that you got that opportunity.
100%. And I do think it is very difficult for people who are come off of a show like Love Island, because for the average person, and I don't count myself in that average person bracket only because I've never been one to be swayed with drinking or drugs. Like I've never done drugs. And I think as a young person, being put in those situations where drugs are everywhere, drinks everywhere, the lifestyle, because of the money that you're earning, you can go out every night and get absolutely shit faced, and it's kind of seen as normal. And so I think for the average person going into that world, it's so dangerous because you are surrounded by people who are doing all these things, and that's what you deem as normal because they're like, oh, these people have been in the industry for years. Like, oh, if they're doing it, maybe that's what I should be doing. I never thought that because I was like, ooh, like if I said to my friends, oh, I had a cigarette today, my friends would be like, what are you doing? You don't smoke. You're not a smoker. You've never smoked. And they'd kind of hammer me and being like, that's not you. That's not part of your values. No one smokes. Okay. It's bad for your health. What are you doing? And so I've always kind of had those people around me to kind of keep me in check and be like, that's not you. Whereas I think that the danger is some of these people don't have their core friendship groups, or they move away from home, or they're based up north and they've moved to London, so they don't have those people around them that they need to guide them through this maze of highs and lows and constant paranoia and anxiety and drinks and drugs. And people think it's this amazing shiny lifestyle, and I think that's what I always thought being semi-famous would be, is that it would be amazing and you'd be rich. And I remember I genuinely thought I was rich. I was not rich. When I first left Love Island, I was living in my overdraft at university. I was so bad at budgeting. And I suddenly was earning all this money. I thought, oh my God, I'm rich. I'm literally not going to have to work a single day of my life ever again. I mean, I was earning like 200 grand, like maybe that first year, maybe a bit more. And that's not rich. I mean, yes, of course, it's a lot of money, but you're not including tax in that. You're not including corporation tax. You're not including VAT, all things that I genuinely did not know about at that time. And I just remember, like, it's a shift in mindset, because I think now I look back, I'm like, I was such a moron, like in so many ways, just in the way I was behaving and the way that I was spending my money. I was spending my money on handbags, and I was buying stuff all the time that I just didn't need. It was all very materialistic stuff. I bought like this brand new massive car, and it was so expensive. And I look back and I just think, what on earth was I doing? I just really got swept up in the materialistic things. And I mean, I could have saved myself a lot of money, but it's a learning curve that I feel like I've learned now.
What would you say to people who are in that pattern? I've certainly been there. When you look outside of yourself, often, if not to go too deep with this, but like often it's because there's pain or internal like turmoil or insecurities or issues that you haven't really addressed in yourself. So it's too painful to look at that or do the work like you've done the last year. So you look outside yourself for like a quick fix. It's like, let's go and buy that bag or that car or whatever it might be. Like, what would you say to people who are using that as a bit of a coping mechanism?
I think the order in which things should go, from my experience, and this is a something that you should take on for the rest of your life, is that the list of priorities are people, money, things. Like, so if you're going to spend your money, spend it on the people that you love, spend it on the people around you who are less fortunate than you, spend it on your brother or your mum, or just giving back to people who have given to you, like along the way, because ultimately you are only where you are because someone has showed you kindness, or someone has given you an opportunity, or someone has believed in you. So turn to those people who have helped you get to where you are and take them for dinner or spend money on them. And I think a lot of it is that world makes you very selfish, and it makes you kind of very self-absorbed. And I think as soon as you take yourself out of the equation and look to the people who have contributed to where you are, that's where you need to be spending your money, because those are the people that will be with you for the rest of your life.
Unbelievable. Yeah. What's coming up for me when you say that is just like no one can do it by themselves, can they?
No,
Like,
no, you can't. And that's so important. You just have to cherish the people around you and just be thankful. And I
mm,
think you probably know that the affirmations and the gratitude is such an amazing way to show you some perspective on what is important, which is not the money or the things that you have in your life. It is the people. It's all about human connection, and it's all about the people around you that, because when shit hits the fan, which it does in people's lives, that's when you realize who your true friends are. And I think that was a real harsh reality for me, because, when my friend passed away, there were people that really just came out of the woodwork and were solid and were just incredible friends to me, who, I was friends with, but I never thought that they would step up in the way that they did. And in hindsight, the people that were almost closest to me, like, I was in a relationship at the time, and my other half at the time, he did not know how to support me. Um, and I think I was so shocked by that, because some people just don't have the capacity to be able to cope with things like that. And I find that people that have dealt with trauma in their past and have suffered a lot with loss, or suffered with mental health, or come from broken families, or struggled in their childhood, are often more self-aware and are often more empathetic. And I think that going through shit stuff when you're younger and in your life, it makes you more human.
mm.
It makes you able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. It gives you this human connection to understand in some way how someone else is hurting.
And you
And I
also,
think,
sorry, come on, carry on.
no, I just think that some people aren't able to do that.
Mm. I think it also, especially if you have a difficult childhood, like you learn how to survive
Mm,
because your circumstances, you're like, fuck, you very quickly learn. If you've got loads of stability, you don't need to do that, right? But if there's things
mm,
that you're not quite sure about or that worry you or whatever, or you've got difficult circumstances, yeah, you very quickly adapt and go, right, I've got to rely on myself here, or I've got to figure out who I need to please and get validation from in order to survive, and they can help me or whatever it is.
that's so true.
I want to read you a extract from a book because it was
Please do.
literally just like as you were saying that about relationships, I was like, oh, um, it's quite intense. So a little warning.
I like it. I like intense.
Okay, cool. So access to your true essence will also give you insight into the mirror of relationship, because all relationship is a reflection of your relationship with yourself. For example, if you have guilt, fear, and insecurity over money or success or anything else, then these are a reflection of guilt, fear, and insecurity as a basic aspect of your personality. No amount of money or success will solve these basic problems of existence. Only intimacy with the self will bring about true healing.
That's so true.
I literally read it
That
the
is
other
so
week.
true.
Yeah,
I
like,
That really resonates with me, actually, because I think when I was grieving, I was in a relationship at the time, and I remember being so angry because I was annoyed that he wasn't able to support me, and I was so angry because I was feeling insecure, and I was feeling sad, and I was feeling heartbroken, and I was looking outwardly for someone to heal me and someone to cure me of this pain that I was in. And whilst I think people can help you on the way to heal, and they can show you patience and love and compassion, it's down to you, really, because you are the only person that can help the situation. I was in such a bad place. I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. I had no motivation to do anything. And it started with me reading Rhonda Byrne, The Magic, because it gave me these kind of, it gave me the structure of, okay, I'm going to write 10 things I'm grateful for. And that honestly saved me, because going back to the reparenting thing, I never really had discipline when I was younger in terms of bedtimes, and I never used to finish the food on my plate, and no one was there to be like, you need to finish that.
Yeah.
So discipline was something that I've had to give myself as I've kind of got into my mid 20s. I've seen as something really valuable to do, is to give myself discipline, because it's so important. And I've definitely learned the importance of that kind of growing up. But you can only really rely on yourself for your own happiness. And I think when you stop seeking happiness from other people, which is something that a lot of women do, because they feel like, oh, I need someone else to be complete, I need someone else to be happy, when you can be happy on your own. And that's when the best things happen to you, is when you just focus on yourself. I mean, I don't compare myself to anyone on Instagram anymore. I don't look at jobs that other people are doing. I spend less time on Instagram than I ever have done, um, because I'm focused on myself. I'm focused on my own journey. I'm focused on, what do I want to do this year, irregardless of what anyone else is doing. What brands do I want to work with this year? Like, what do I want to achieve this year? And it works out so much better, because I'm constantly not looking at my peripherals with, oh, who's doing this and who's earning this much money and who's doing this. And it's a lot more healthy to be that way, I think. And I wish someone had taught me that kind of when I'd first left.
Well, look, you're not that it's a competition, as you just said, but you're a long way ahead of most people with that mindset. So, could you share a little bit about? So you said so you said the book Rhonda Byrne. That was, I've not read The Magic, but it's the follow on from The Secret. Am I right?
Yes.
So, what specifically are you doing? You said you're writing down 10 things each morning, but like, what's the actual practice that you're doing? And then I'd love to, if you're comfortable, talk a little bit about what the reparenting is. I know someone who's done it as well, but I'd be fascinated to hear what you're doing. Are you working with someone to do that? Are you doing it by yourself, or how does that look?
Okay, amazing. Let me think. Should I start off with, what was the first thing you asked me?
First one was the gratitude
Rhonda,
practice
gratitude practice.
from the book The Magic.
So my friend had recommended me this book, The Magic by Rhonda Byrne, and she was a very spiritual friend of mine. And I remember at the time thinking, I'm not going to do that. That's not going to work. I was very close-minded. I was like, meh, that sounds weird. And I also struggle to sit down and read a book. Like, I like to be up and doing things, and I find it hard to sit in one space. I'm quite fidgety. Um, but I think when I was in the darkness, I just needed something that was easy to read, and I could read from bed, and I didn't have to get up and do anything. I just had to read a book. So that was the time where I'd pulled out The Magic. And so I'd never read The Secret actually before this. I went straight onto The Magic, and what it does is it's a reading for every single day, and it gives you like a checklist, like a task to do every single day. So on the first day is the 10 gratitudes. And then the second day, they introduce something like, it's called the magic rock. So you put something from your surroundings. It could be a crystal, it could be just an ornament, really, that's relatively small. And so this is the second practice, is that before you go to bed every single night, you hold that rock and you think of the best thing that happened in that day. Could be huge, could be small, could be a small win that is just, for me, was just eating 3 meals in that day was a win for me at the time. Um, and it really changed my mindset to a lot of things, because I really was thinking hard about all the things that I was grateful for. And it gives you examples, because it tells you to split it off into different sections. So relationships, health, career, money. Um, and so I'd never thought in depthly about, the things that I had in my life. Like, why would you? Because a lot of people are just autonomously living their life kind of day by day, and not really thinking about in the moment, the present of like what they have achieved. Um, so that was an amazing book for me to read at that time, because it opened my mind to the universe. It opened my mind to mindset. It opened my mind to that your mindset is completely your choice, and that comes with being disciplined and giving yourself these practices and doing them every day to improve your mindset. So there's what are the other things? And I haven't read the book in a couple of years now, but it's good because you can take away from the book what's applicable to you and what feels
Mm.
right for you. Like, I don't do the magic rock one. It also teaches you the affirmations. It also teaches you to be grateful for things that you might necessarily see as a bad thing. And I think I was very, very, I used to complain a lot about everything, the traffic, haven't got enough money, this bill. And it's learning to be grateful for those bills, and it's learning to be grateful for the traffic, because it gives you patience. It teaches you how to budget. It's being grateful for the crappy things that you go through life. Like, I had kind of a quite unhealthy relationship, but has it taught me a lot about myself? Yes, it has. Like, and you can't completely blame another person for your unhappiness. And I think I've learned that as well. And it's learning to be ungrateful for the crappy things that happen in your life, because they have taught you lessons which have brought you to where you are. And that book really taught me a lot about self-awareness and self-love.
So good. What an unbelievable outlook. I couldn't agree more, but it takes a lot of training, and you said discipline as well. Like, that's amazing. So you've kept hold of the gratitudes. Do you do it every day?
So I try and do it every day, depending on work kind of commitments. But most of the time I try and do it at least 2 or 3 times a week. Um, and once you're kind of a pro with gratitude, you can kind of sit outside and just do it in your head, and like
Mm.
kind of be in a moment of mindfulness and appreciate things and not write them down. But I do feel like writing it down is a really good step, especially for somebody who maybe as a beginner, um, maybe just start with 3 things, and kind of setting your intentions for the day is something that I like to do, as well, which I think is really impactful, on like your mood. Like, if you set your intention for the day to kind of spread happiness, which I love that intention for the day, um, it's more about other people. Like, I think I focus a lot more on other people now. But if you set your intention to spreading kindness or spreading happiness for other people, you end up giving people compliments on the street, or saying, "Oh, I really like your hair," or just spreading good vibes, I think, to other people. So I think that's another thing that people would really benefit from.
When you're back in the UK, I'm going to send you a copy of this book because you are
Yes,
going to love
please do. What book is it?
Yeah, actually, for people who listen who want to get it as well, it's called the Seven Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra, and
I have
it's
not heard of this, but I've heard of obviously Deepak Chopra.
yeah, it's one of his like first books. It's unbelievable. So the second chapter, which is the one I read last night, because that was from the first one, the extract I read. The second one, it was all about giving and receiving. So if you give to the world or to the universe, so in your case, there, because it doesn't have to be financial, you're giving compliments to people or wishing people well, you get that back as well. So
Mm,
yeah, and I believe that so much. The more that you give, the more that you are, and doing it authentically and with like happiness and really meaning it, then you get that back
mm.
in bucket loads. And yeah, okay, I'm going to send you this for sure because you're going to love
Please send it to me. Like, I'm a big believer in, like, I think as well, like, for people who are listening who are maybe in a bit of a rut, or suffering with depression and suffering with anxiety, which I think I'm really lucky, because a lot of people, they deal with that on like a consistent basis, and it's something that they will probably always have to live with. I'm not in that bracket of people, but giving to others and doing things for other people will make you feel good. So even if it's small, even if you don't want to leave your house, spend your day writing some letters to the people that you love, just saying, "Miss you, I think you're amazing, and I'm thinking of you."
it.
And it's small things like that that they do make you feel good, because you're making someone else feel good. And that's something about, I think it does heal you a lot, is helping others.
Yeah, selflessly being selfish.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, it's amazing. It's so good to hear. I think gratitude as well it's so simple, but it does rewire your brain to see things in a positive light. So I couldn't agree more. So if people are suffering or struggling, like, that's such an easy one to do. I think 10 is quite a lot of things to find as well. When you do 10,
100%.
I've
Also, you
I
don't want them to be the same either.
yeah. So what, each time you sit down, you try and find 10 new ones.
Yeah, I mean, mine are like now very like in depth. Like, I'm grateful for like my internal organs. Like, we're going deep. We're going very
Mm.
like, say that I'm grateful for my limbs. I'm grateful for the water that I have coming out the tap. I'm grateful that I have a fridge. Um, so, and obviously those aren't the things that you initially think of, but
Mhm.
I think the deeper that you can think into things, and like the longer that you're doing your gratitudes, the more specific that they are, because they are, again, things that probably I look past, and I'm like, oh, actually, that's the luxury,
Yeah.
is to have a fridge and to be able to have access to clean water and things like that. That is a luxury. So,
It's so good because you're almost rewiring not just the mind, but it's, our instinct is to filter things out, to keep things as simple as possible. So yeah, we do overlook the great things as well as some of the bad things. Like, I'm similar to you. Mine would be like grateful for the fresh air coming through the window, or like things like that you would never
mm,
consider normally.
exactly.
Um, you mentioned your friend who committed suicide a couple of times.
Hmm.
I think we often, because this episode is in collaboration in part with and in support of Calm Mental Health Charity.
Oh, I love Calm.
Yeah, and actually, I rewatched your interview on ITV, and I didn't realize at the time, but the person you were sat next to was the founder of Calm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I've been doing work with them for ever since I started this 3.5, 4 years ago. So I've been running events, and as I said, every year I'll do something that's specific to mental health. So um, I think when we think about suicide, first of all, we try not to think about suicide, and then when we do, we probably just like give it a little bit of attention because it's painful and it's scary to consider. But we've never really spoken about on here the impact that suicide has on people around that person, the family, the friends of which you were one. Would you be comfortable talking about your experience and how that left you feeling, and possibly even the family members of them as well, just to shed
Yeah,
some
of
light?
course. Of course, of course, of course. I think it's all really beneficial. Ask me whatever you want.
Okay, great. So I mean, look, obviously it was a huge shock when you found out. And again, I watched the interview. It's so emotional to watch that. The
Mm.
Good Morning Britain, was it?
This morning.
Oh, this morning. Sorry, this morning. Um, so like, how did you find out? How did you first hear about it, and how did you initially react versus when it sunk in and you actually realised what happened?
So I was on the train into London to go out with some friends in Clapham, and I was sat in this random pub, and my friend, my makeup artist, actually, Crystal, she messaged me and she said, I don't know where you are, but have you heard what's happened to Mike? And I remember being like, no, like, what do you mean? And she sent me this link, and it was of an article that was written saying that he'd killed himself. And I remember my initial reaction. I was like, no way. My initial reaction was no chance this has happened because so he died in February. So he killed himself in February, but back in November was when I knew that he was really very depressed and he was on antidepressants and he was really struggling at that point. From that moment on, I genuinely in my head I was like, he's been getting better because that's what he was telling me. He was telling me that he was getting better. I gave him the magic, the book, the magic. I was like calling him every day saying, have you done your gratitudes? Have you done your affirmations? I mean, he was calling me in the evening because I think the main struggle for him was he did not like being alone at night, like alone with his thoughts. Um, so like my first instinct was, I think this is fake news. This must be fake news. Like, so I rushed outside. I went outside this pub and this was on my own. I just said to my friends, I'm just going to be 1 second because I just honestly thought it was a joke or I thought it was fake news. And I messaged him like, hey babe, heard this like crazy story. Like, can you ring me when you get this? And then it only had like one tick on WhatsApp. And I just remember I like my stomach kind of like dropped because I was like, oh my God. Because he was always on his phone. I then tried to call him, it went straight to voicemail. And then I think 5 minutes after this, everyone was trying to call me. Everyone was texting me saying, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And I just remember being like, oh my God, oh my God. And I remember just not really feeling any emotion for like the first like 40 minutes. I just was kind of very confused because I'd spoken to him maybe 2 or 3 days before. Um, and we FaceTimed and he was like, telling me about how because in the magic as well, one of the practices is to carry around with you a picture of your loved ones like in the car or in your wallet and to look at it every day and just to like be thankful. And I remember like a few days before he died, he was in the car and he was like, look, he was like, I've got my pictures up here of like my family, my mum, my brother, and like it makes me really grateful. And I was like, oh, that's really good, like I'm glad that you're feeling good. And he said something like, I'm really really grateful that you kind of introduced me to this book. I just really appreciate you and like you've really helped me kind of get out of this like headspace and I just can't thank you enough and like I love you to bits. And I just was like, oh my God, don't be silly. I was like, of course. And I think that was him saying goodbye. Like at the time, like on reflection, I do think that was him saying goodbye because I was on the phone to him for just under an hour. And a lot of it was kind of revolved around him being grateful and him saying thank you. And just, I mean, in hindsight, it definitely was him saying goodbye. But that was what I think I was really perplexed about at the time when someone told me because I just couldn't believe it because we'd had this discussion about how he'd been reading the magic and that he felt better and all of this stuff and then it just happened. So I was in shock for a couple of days at least and I think it was only until I got home um that it really sunk in when people were calling me and I just I spoke to one of his best friends on the phone when I was at what state? I was at St Pancras station, and his friend was like, "It's true. Like he hung himself last night." And I just broke down into tears at this London St Pancras station. I was like wailing, like I was beside myself, and I was with my ex boyfriend at the time, and I just couldn't believe it. I was so upset. I felt so broken. And what was making it even worse is that I had press people calling me. I had press people calling my mobile number. I had radio people asking if I wanted to go on air and do an interview. It was disgusting. It was really bad. And I just remember hanging up on these people. I was thinking, you guys have no like sense of remorse, or you guys do not have a heart. Like the fact that you're calling people. And the first thing I thought was, I fucking hope they're not calling his parents at
Mm.
this point. But it was a real harsh reality.
So you think that he had consciously decided that he was going to do that, and he was speaking to you almost as a goodbye then,
A
rather than it
hundred.
being like a spare of the moment decision?
I don't think it was a spur of the moment decision. I think it was, especially when you hang yourself. It's not something that you can just do. Like you have to research how to do with a certain knot. You have to, there's so many things that that go into making that decision. Because if I wanted to kill myself right now, I wouldn't know how to do that.
Mm.
So it takes a lot of, I think, prior research, which is horrible to say, but um, so for I don't know if many people know this, but he was opening a cafe, and it was something that he was really really excited about, because he loved cooking food. He was really good chef, and I think he knew that he needed to do something to get him out of this dark place, because he just did not like being by himself, which is why he ended up getting roped into going on all these nights out. And I think his friends were, you know what guys are like when someone says, they're heartbroken, or they're feeling depressed, or they don't want to get out of bed, or they're feeling low. I think a guy's initial reaction is, "Oh mate, you'll be fine, let's just go out and get fucked up." And I think guys in general have very shallow conversations in general. And I think this is the main problem, is that I think there were so many signs to the lead up of him passing away, um, that are huge signs that potentially people did not look into, because I don't think men are that aware of mental health
Mm.
and what that can do to somebody. So I remember, so he was on antidepressants, and I think a couple of his friends were like, "Oh, why are you on antidepressants? Like, mate, you'll be fine." And I think for him, like that was really hard, because I think deep down he knew that he needed to be on antidepressants, but he conflictingly he also had people in his life who were like, you don't need it. So it caused him to be not consistently on these antidepressants. So, and I think everyone who's ever been on antidepressants knows that you go through a couple of bad days of feeling worse, and then it does get better, but you have to be consistent. You have to take them every single day. And the most dangerous thing to do is to take them for 3 days, off for 2 days, take them for 4 days, come off for a day. You have to be consistent with these things, and he was not being consistent. He was on and off antidepressants. He was trying to use sleeping tablets to get to sleep so that he wasn't left alone with his thoughts. And I think he really really struggled with coping with his depression and his darkness. And it's something he none of his friends had gone through, no one that he knew had gone through. And I think he felt really alone. And I think that's where I thought that my value lied with our friendship, is that he was so open with me about depression, his antidepressants, taking sleeping tablets, going out, and why he was going out. And he wanted to feel numb, because he just didn't want to be thinking all of the awful things that he was thinking. Like, he'd be left alone with his own mind. And I think the worst part, I think probably with the family and the people around people that do kill themselves, is the feeling that could you have done more? Like, could you have prevented this? And in hindsight, if someone is going to take their own life, they will take their own life, no matter how much you try and impact their life in a positive way. They have to help themselves, and they have to be given the resources to help themselves. Um, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And I spent a year and a half, just the guilt, and I felt awful, because he had messaged me the day before and I didn't reply. And that haunted me for ages, because I thought maybe if I'd have spoken to him before, and
Mm.
maybe if I'd have seen him this time. And I hadn't seen him in a couple of months. Like, and I just was riddled with guilt because I thought I was the only person that he could openly speak about these things, and I thought he was better, and he wasn't. So I kind of definitely held myself accountable. But I think now in hindsight, you can never hold yourself accountable for someone else's death in that way, because ultimately everyone surrounding him was trying to do their best and loved him in their own right. And I don't think anyone can take blame for that. If anything, you can change the way that you speak with your friends in the future and impact people's lives in the future, because especially for his friends, I think they had a massive wake up call, because I don't think they had any idea that he would do that. Um, and it was a shock for everybody.
Thank you, Montana. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, I think you're right. We're just generally uneducated. So what you're doing is amazing by speaking openly about it and sharing the experience, and also your feelings around other people, and how they can do a better job of either being a friend or coping with similar experiences. Yeah, and it sounds, when it's like premeditated like that, days beforehand, it's, how could you ever even start to think about changing someone's mind when it's that set in stone? I watched the Caroline Flack documentary. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
I haven't watched it yet. I've actually been kind of putting it off because I just feel
Yeah,
like it's going to be quite sad and harrowing.
I put it off as well. It's quite dark, but it's just fascinating how pretty much the consistent theme throughout is that all of them, family members included, kind of always expected her to do it. And it's just, it really surprised me. I was just like, I'm a solution person. I want to help. And like, even on Clubhouse the other day, I was getting frustrated because I was like, okay, great, thanks for your story, but how can you help people who are listening?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We were talking about, we would get to in a minute. I don't want to keep you too long, I want to respect your time, but we were talking about Swim Society, your business, and body positivity, which is a big message for you guys. And everyone wanted to share their experience of not feeling positive about their body. And I was like, this is amazing you're sharing, but can you tell them how people can be positive so people can actually get benefit from this? So yeah, no, I think it's amazing that you're sharing that, and most importantly, at the end, saying the end bit about what we can actually do is just be there as much as we possibly can, change the way that we think about it.
I think it's hard because I think the difference between the Caroline's death and Mike's death was, I think Caroline's battle with depression and mental health was a consistent thing. And I think everyone was aware of it. And again, her being in the spotlight did not help her one tiny bit, because the press were horrible to her. People were horrible to her. People were like, oh, you're on Love Island, you're the host, and you've not found love. Just the most horrible things that, as a woman, like that you just don't want to read that. Um, and I feel so awful for her having to battle that. And you still have to slap on a smile every single time you're on television. It's and it's hard because I think you end up pretending to yourself that you're okay when really, like, your mind's going at 100 miles an hour, thinking that I don't want to live this life anymore.
Mm.
But with Mike specifically, it was about making people realize that you have to have these open conversations. I mean, the day after I'd found out, I went over to his parents' house, and it was with a group of his friends. And he actually messaged like one of his friends the day of, like, and it was literally hours before he was about to kill himself, and he sent his friend a message saying like, "Mate, I don't think I'm going to see you anymore. I don't think I'm going to see you ever again." And his friend did not understand. And why would you? I think it's not your everyday thing that someone messages you something like that. And his friend was like, what do you mean? And he was saying how, oh, I don't want to be here anymore. I just wanted to say goodbye and thanks for being such a good friend. And I think his friend did not realize the seriousness of what Mike was saying, because I don't think a lot of men have dealt with mental health or been around people that talk about mental health. And I think men are stereotypically the people that shouldn't talk about emotions, and that have to support their families, and that have to support other people around them that do deal with emotions. But realistically, we all bleed the same. We're all humans. And it's about understanding the signs when someone is depressed and someone is, suicidal. Because I think now, looking back, it's so obvious. When
Mm.
someone's erratic, when someone's consistently chasing to go out and do other things, and normally alcohol is a massive indicator, drugs is a massive indicator, when someone's used to having a specific routine and they're veering off that routine, they're not being consistent, they're going out to the early hours of the morning, and they're just generally just being quite unhealthy. And it's a way of self-destructing, because I wouldn't go out night after night drinking alcohol. So I'd be like, oh, that's very bad for my body. I'm not going to do that. Like, it's like self-harming yourself in a way. Whereas someone who's dealing with depression and doesn't see themselves as worthy, they have no problem harming themselves in whatever way that means, whether it's doing a load of drugs that they know they're going to feel like crap in the morning, but they don't care because it numbs the pain for that small space of time. And it's looking out amongst your friends about, and this is specifically, actually, I say everybody, but this is specifically on men as well, because I think women are great communicators and they always show compassion to their friends if they say something on WhatsApp or on a call. But this is specifically to the men listening. No, be more aware of your friends' habits, be more aware of your friends' moods, and scratch beneath the surface. If one of your friends says, yeah, mate, I'm feeling a bit shit, don't just say, oh, that's annoying. Anyway, mate, should we go to Nando's? Like, do the due diligence and dig a little bit deeper and go out of your way to ask your friends, why are you feeling shit today? Why is that? Are you struggling mentally? Like, do you want some help? Do you want me to come over and talk to you? And really kind of learn to nurture. I think women are natural nurturers. I used to stay up on the phone to Mike for hours talking about how depressed he was, what he was going to do to help, and what I was giving him advice. Not that I kind of could give him any informed advice, but of what's going to make him feel better. And I think men are, I know this sounds horrible, but I think men are kind of socialized to be chronically quite selfish and to not really think of others before themselves. Because they do have pressures of being the breadwinner and earning a lot of money and supporting others around them. But men need support as well, sometimes more than women, because women have verbal diarrhea a lot of the time and will just offload to whoever it is, and that's an amazing quality that women have. But men do not have that same quality. They see such a weakness in being vulnerable, and I think that is detrimental to men's mental health, is that you have to ask those hard questions. And it's not about a woman asking men these hard questions. It's about standing together as a male and talking openly about struggling and anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts, because I did not realize how many men per week commit suicide. I think it's like 11. I think it's like 11. It's either 9 or 11. Um, and it's devastating. And I just think, hopefully when I have children and if I have a son, I would teach them to be empathetic and to be compassionate and to be in touch with their emotions, because it is so important. I just don't think anyone deserves to lose their son or their daughter because of lack of communication.
You're amazing.
Thank you.
Honestly, Montella, that's unbelievable. Like, thank you so much. I think that's a message that we all need to hear. And you say, as I said so many times in this chat already, like you say it so articulately. I'm even listening as myself, as a mental health ambassador, as someone who talks about this openly. I had a call with a friend this morning who I won't say what his name is, but basically it was like, I had a crash at the weekend and pretty much drank a bottle of whiskey. And I'm thinking, fuck, that doesn't sound good. I'm like, mate, but are you okay? Are you okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, anyway, right, I'll come down next week. And we'll like, I'm thinking,
No, there's something
I
deeper
need to,
there.
yeah, like I need to do more there. And you got to be persistent, don't you? Otherwise it will just get brushed under the rug. And I'll call him after this.
Yeah, call him after this. Give him
Yeah.
a FaceTime.
Yeah, because look, the stark reality is it doesn't always have to end in suicide, but it does mean that a lot of people live in pain and suffering, and they don't have to. So yeah, I think you're amazing, and thank you so much. Look, I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to talk about your company
I've
because
actually got like 15, 25 more minutes, so I'm all good for time.
okay, all right, amazing. So, and I don't want to just nonchalantly flip from that kind of conversation to the business chat, but I don't really know if there's any more I want to add there. Like, you've summed it up perfectly.
I think I think it is a really important conversation to have, and to be honest, like, obviously it's swim society is great and it's a business, but I ultimately the brand and the community within swim society is to help people.
Mm.
I think people who have a lot of followers and people who are celebrities and people who have influence on younger people, the main message should be to help people, because there are so many people that are dealing with so many awful things, and everyone's dealing with traumas. Everyone is dealing with traumas, and It's so bizarre because I think I'm so much more aware of things now than I ever was. Like even when I'm in London and I'm on the tube and I'm such a people watcher, and you think that all these people on the tube that you're in a carriage with,
Hmm.
how many traumas, but like have they gone through? Like all of these people sat on the tube, and I think people are normally quite annoyed and pissed off and tired on the tube, obviously. But I just find it fascinating that we see people all the time, we meet people all the time, but we have no idea what's going on like in their lives. Because I think especially with men, there's such an ego attached to them letting go and them letting their guard down. I don't know why men feel so uncomfortable talking about emotions. I think maybe it's just like they've just been conditioned to be that way. But I think it is all about the younger generation and teaching them how to communicate properly. Because I think as a young girl, every young girl's dream is to have a doll and to look after and to brush his hair, and if they have a very maternal instinct naturally anyway. But I think especially as a boy growing up, it's very much like, oh, if you fall over, oh, rub some dirt in it, it's fine, you'll
Mm.
be fine, don't cry. And it's seen as such a negative thing to cry or get upset. And I think it's to teach your sons and teach your kids to be gentle, to be compassionate, to be empathetic to other people, because I think ultimately that's the main thing is teaching men that it's okay from a young age, because boys can be nasty at school, and I think they don't really think about what they're saying. They're very kind of ego driven, performance driven. What can they be good at? What are they the best in? Um, can they be captain of something? And they're all very, I think, parenting wise, probably rewarded too much on their achievements as a young child. So, that probably teaches them a lot about, oh, well, I'm only going to get rewarded if I achieve something, and I need to, scrap everything else off to get there. But it's about changing that kind of narrative and actually teaching them to be compassionate human beings. And I think that's really where I think your podcast is probably really valuable, is that you're kind of teaching people of all ages that you can change whenever you like. It's about your mindset. Um, so I think it's really valuable. And obviously with Mental Health Awareness Week, with you doing events, I would love to get involved in whatever way that I can, because I think it's really amazing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I would love to have you, all of them.
Every single one.
Yeah. I'm hoping, I don't know if I'm probably being a bit too ambitious, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to do in-person events by the time um, May comes around. Might be a bit
Oh,
too
I
soon.
hope so.
Yeah, that'd be amazing, wouldn't it? So, yeah, fingers crossed. But yeah, you're just speaking to me directly about the performance and the ambition and the kind of like, that was literally my childhood. I was pushed into sport, which I'm really glad. My mum was an aerobics teacher. My dad was a rugby player. So like naturally I was going to go into sport. Football turned out to be the one that I was good at. So I just pursued that. And then you're rewarded then, not just like at home and not just at school through what you achieve, but then on the pitch, even with, I know that people liked me because I was good at football as at a very young age, 5, 6, 7, 8, people liked me because I was good at football. And then that's wires you to see the world in a certain light, that when you are good at something, like you were saying, that means you're okay, that means you're accepted. And that ultimately means that our only wish, which is to be accepted and to feel enough, or you said earlier, to feel worthy, like that's all we're seeking. But
Mm.
I think it's quite insightful you're saying from a female perspective about how you're quite nurturing and brought up to be like that. I think again, if I could speak about the male perspective, it's thought to be weak to show any sort of vulnerability. Like it's thought to be so behaviors, whether we're saying things out of turn in school, like you said there, we're not thinking about what we're saying. I think on a subconscious level, we're speaking just from fear. We're afraid to say what we really are thinking, which is probably like what you did, which is go and sit with the person who is sat on their own at lunch. I might have, or other people might say, look at that loser over there who sat by themselves, because you're saying it from fear and possibly fear that will be you one day, or not
Mm.
understanding why that isn't you. And it's hard to kind of digest some of that. So, yeah, we could probably dig into that for a while, but
Yeah. I don't think people realize, though, I think especially as parents, though, this is the last thing I'll say about it, is that I do think the way that you bring up your kids is so, so, so important, because if you constantly praise them just based on their achievements, that can really instill quite narcissistic traits in somebody. And we all know that like one of the main narcissistic traits is lack of empathy. And I'm not saying that all men are like narcissistic, but I think they're probably way more likely to be narcissistic because they are just like performance, like that they're just they are judged on their performance, whether it's academics or whether it's sport. And I think it's every dad's dream for their son to be the best, or the captain of the football team, or
Hmm.
like the captain of the rugby team, or like to win the trophy and the cup and all this stuff. And I think as a child, like putting that pressure on to make your parents proud because you want to win, it like I think it can be quite devastating for a child. It's a lot of pressure. And really you just want them to enjoy their life. Like life is too short. And I think being a child is the main time in your life where you can make mistakes and you can try out what you like and what you don't like. And if you want to play with a Barbie doll, you can play with a Barbie doll. And if you want to win the rugby cup on the weekend, you can do that too. And it's about just empowering and championing children to just do whatever the hell they want to do, and less about what you want them to do, and more about what makes them like intrinsically happy. And I'll stop there. I'll stop yabbing on now.
You're not yabbing on at all. It's amazing. I've got an 8-month-old daughter.
Oh,
Daughter.
it's a
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah.
I feel like men are always like, oh, I really want a boy, and then they always get girls.
Do you know what? I was one of those. I said I'd love a boy. What I really saying was I want a mini me. Mini version of me would be perfect. But when I found out it was a girl, I was just like beyond like blissfully happy, and she's the best thing ever. It's exactly what I needed. But I know you're like, I've read about anyway, praising effort over results. So even she's like 8 months now, and she's like picking up a cup, and I'm like, well done, you tried really hard.
That's the best way to be.
Yeah, but it's hard because naturally you know, people are already competitive. Is she on the move yet? Is she crawling? Is she standing up? Is she walking already? And it's just like
Mm,
she just does it in her own time, like whenever. But it's hard to remind yourself to do that.
yeah, 100%.
So Swim Society, I
Hmm.
think it's so great that you've gone on to do this, and particularly the values of the business, which are clearly portrayed. Um, but often what we talk about in Take Flight is like where the courage to actually act on the idea came from. So we all have ideas and dreams and things that we aspire to achieve, but where did the actual courage come to take that leap? Like what made you do it versus someone who might have had the idea but not follow through?
Um, well, I think firstly, I'm in a very privileged position that I do have a lot of followers, and at the time, I had a lot of brands that wanted to work with me. So I feel like I had a lot of opportunities to pitch my wonderful swim idea because I already came up with the brand and the ethos and what I wanted the brand to be. I was just more looking for someone to financially back me and kind of lead me in the right direction in terms of more retail experience because I didn't really have any. So I've actually sat on a beach in the Maldives. Um, and then I came up with this idea that I wanted to create this swimwear brand that was all inclusive and doesn't categorize women. And then I kind of went to a few investors, and I thought, yeah, this is amazing because they'll basically run it and they'll put their money and they're probably experts. And I think, again, I was just super naive getting involved with investors. Um, and they kind of didn't really let me have my voice, and they didn't let me make the brand what I wanted it to be. So last year I actually bought them out, and now I'm the sole owner of Sim Society, which is really exciting. But I think it does take so much courage starting something by yourself. Again, like hate to say it, but especially as a woman, I think it's such a unorthodox thing in your head where someone's like, start your own brand. You're like, me, start my own brand on my own. And I remember at the time I thought I can't do this on my own. Like how can I do this on my own? I've got no retail experience. Um, but I think, and I say this to my team as well, if someone asked me in 5 years' time, like, how did you create such a successful brand? Through being kind to people. Genuinely, like it's through being kind to people, because all the people that I use to help me nowadays with the website or like the Google ads or SEO or anything, it's all people that I've known from when I was younger, I did work experience with, I was an intern with. And because I sat with them at lunch because they were sat on their own, or because I used to chat to them and when everyone else was ignoring them or just being an asshole, now they want to help me because they're like, oh, well, you were nice to me. And people will always remember how you made them feel. And I think it's about realizing that it has such an impact on where you'll be when you're older, is nurturing the people on the way up. And I think everyone always thinks like, oh yeah, you should ask like the people at the top. Whereas I actually think you should, you know, be grateful for the people that got you there, which is the people at the bottom.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so good. That it's. I think it's again just like stands for who you are as a character. It's that idea of like the CEO to the janitor. You treat everybody the same. Um,
Mm.
I can't remember. I think it was. I'm going to butcher it, but I think it was John F. Kennedy. I'm
Mm.
going to another one. The sentiment will be there. John F. Kennedy went to visit the NASA headquarters. I think it was the one in Florida. So I can't remember what it's called, but that's not important. He, he went there, and obviously, like presidents have loads of security, and it's really hard to get access to them, and blah 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 blah. Goes into this center, and he goes in to use the toilet, and there's the cleaner in there. He's literally, mopping the floor as he goes in. He's like, "Oh my god, Mr. President, I'm so sorry. Like, let me get out." And he goes, "No, no, do you know it's fine." So he has a little conversation with him. And he says, "So what's your job here?" And he goes, "I'm the guy who helps them get into space." And he was just like taken back by it. It's like, what? It's like the mindset of this cleaner was not I clean the floors. It was like he helps them get in space by keeping it clean in here, like having everything in order, and he does his part. And I just thought it was so like
Oh,
touching to think that they've obviously done a great job at management there as well. But when you've got that kind of buy-in, it comes very naturally. And yeah, it just reminded me as you were telling your story.
you know, it's really important. I think there's one thing that I've learned as being an owner and also being in business with other people who don't share the same values and don't share the same ethos, is that I just think everyone is equal, no matter who you are, what your job role is. I wouldn't have created this company if it wasn't for my employees, and I'm so aware of that. And I think it's so important to treat people with respect. And you see so many unhappy people in the workplace. They get anxiety because there's really off dynamics of like managers, and people aren't that nice, and there's bullying going on under people's noses. And that's just something that I just would never tolerate. And I think if people feel valued somewhere, feel like they're heard, and just just feel appreciated, they will always go above and beyond for you. Like my team, so we're a team of three, well, four actually. We've got an intern, and we talk all the time. We chat about personal stuff, and we actually do a blog on our Swim Society page as well, where we encourage people to share their story. So we had, there was a girl actually who we once, our first ever campaign, we were doing like a casting, and there was a girl that came in, and she looked really really nervous. And it's a very intimidating kind of situation to walk in. There's hundreds of models in there, I mean, literally with like legs up to here, and just everyone was beautiful. And I think you could tell she was very, very young. And I was asking her, so what's your name? And she was like, my name's Amanda. And I was like, you look nervous. I was like, do you want some water? I was like, do you want some time out? I was like, yeah, I'm happy to wait. You can wait and sit with us until you feel comfortable. And she was like, yeah, this is my first ever casting. I'm really nervous. I just, I don't feel comfortable. And I just saw something in her that was so pure. I mean, we'd had some of these models like swaggering in with their like earpods in, like not even taking them out, just like posing for the Polaroids. And there was something about her that was so pure and so beautiful that we actually took her on the campaign, even though we didn't actually use her to shoot with us. We took her because she was just so sweet. And I think that was really important for us to do that, because it helped her grow in confidence, and we wanted to be part of her journey. And we actually found out that she'd suffered with eating disorders, and then she'd kind of been thrust into the modeling world. And we just wanted to look after her really. And I think it's really important to do things like that, where you actually change someone's life experiences by just showing them kindness and bringing them on something that she would not have got picked on any other shoot, because I mean, she was really inexperienced, and she was really nervous, but she was a really good person. And that just was so evident to see. And I'm so glad we still kind of speak to her now, because she is so great. And she's not in the modeling industry anymore, which is what we kind of said at the time. We were like, this is not for you, this industry. Like this industry is going to absolutely ruin you, and you're such a great person, so you shouldn't do that. And I think it is about being kind. Like going back to my point of owning a brand, it's about, I want everybody who interacts with Swim Society to have a positive experience, whether that's the employees, whether that's, it can be anybody, even if it's freelance people, whoever we're working with. I want them to have a positive experience and to really nurture those relationships, because I know that will come back round to help me in the future as well.
Yeah, you can see how happy it makes you to do that as well. Can I ask if you have the same opinion of people not necessarily superior to you or more senior. You know, when you see everyone on a level playing field, whether you are looking, you know, below you in quotations, do you have the same thought process of people who are maybe more experienced or seen as superior?
Um, I think just I think I look at people really differently these days. I think if I see someone who's really kind of uptight and seems quite stern and doesn't seem very warm, instead of being like, oh, they're so moody, I don't want to speak to them, my headspace kind of goes to, I wonder what they went through as a child. They've probably got a bit of childhood trauma they probably need to address. So I think it's really changed my mindset. And I just want to work with nice people. And I say that to the girls all the time. Like the main thing that's so important to me is someone who that we can have a catch up and we can go for lunch with, who can kind of just enjoy and let their hair down and just have a laugh. And I think that is really rare, especially in business. And, you know, I'm in the midst of getting investment for Swim Society as well. And I'm kind of very particular with like who I'm getting involved in the brand. And the main thing is if I get along with them and if I think they're good people. And the questions that I'm asking them on the call, you can see they're like, why is she asking me this question? I'm like, do you have kids? I'm like, are you married? And I'm asking all these questions because people normally, especially like these kind of old investors who are single, never been married, don't have any kids. All they've ever done is be entrepreneurs. And you've probably heard of like the color chart in terms of personality in the workplace. And they're very much red characteristics of like very ruthless. They're not very empathetic. They're so cutthroat. And I think these people have to be slightly narcissistic to get to where they are. These people are quite often the most successful, but I have no intention of working with those people. I can very happily say, you know, I think you're amazing. I think you've achieved just absolutely incredible things, but it's just not right for me. I have to work with someone who is got a good heart, and I think it's hard to find,
Mm.
especially in a very male-dominated space, which is kind of investing and finance.
But the more people who look at it like you are, then the more hopefully that changes. Because I think that you talk about narcissism, it's a scale. Like we are all narcissistic. You're either very narcissistic or much less so. And sadly, the world rewards people. You know, you tend to, as you said, you know, those red personalities, which I used to be one. I think I've changed, which is interesting. But
You don't seem like a red
yeah, I'm
at
different now.
all.
I'm
You
different.
seem like very green yellow.
Really, I'll take that.
Yeah, very green yellow.
Like a turquoise.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, the reason I asked that is just because someone asked me the other day on a podcast, actually, who do you look up to? And I found it really difficult to answer, and not in an egotistical way or like I'm better than anyone way. I was genuinely felt like we're all the same. Like I don't really look, I admire people for what they've done. Absolutely. But do I look up to anyone anymore? No, I don't. I've left that corporate world where you're drilled to think they're better than me, or I have to get up that far up the ladder to be as good as them, or whatever that is. And yeah, it sounds like you're very, very similar. So that's why I asked that one.
Yeah.
Last one, Montana, before we ask the quick fire three at the end.
Okay.
So I just wanted to ask, and it might be quite difficult to sum up quickly, but you spoke about reparenting. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that and what that looked like in case people are listening and just that kind of triggered something for them and they would be interested in looking at it for themselves?
Okay, definitely. I think it's so important. I've been learning more about it in the last couple of weeks. But reparenting is essentially giving yourself something that you did not have as a child. And obviously, coming from a broken family, I lacked discipline, is what I mentioned before. And I also think I lacked self love. And that's sometimes things that parents can't actually teach you. It's just something that you develop through, you know, if your parents aren't there a lot of the time and you're kind of always got a childminder or always got kind of a someone that's not your parent really. But often it can look like very different things. Like a lot of kids don't feel heard and don't feel seen, whether that's, you know, your parents never listened to your emotions when you were younger, or, you know, your parents never gave you enough time. These habits will then come about in your adult life, and it's about giving yourself what you needed when you were a child, because you'll have bad habits as an adult as a result of not having them when you were a child. And as an adult, it's our responsibility to kind of put those pillars in place, to make sure that we are being the best person that we can be. So for example, mine is discipline. It's about getting up early. I hate getting up early. It's something that I absolutely despise. I'm not a morning person. I never have been. I never will be. But I've learned that it is important to give myself discipline. It's like, for example, I always, always, always leave a tiny bit of food on my plate. I don't know why. I could definitely still eat it, but it's a control thing because I don't think anyone told me you have to finish that. I think it was my way of controlling something in my
Mm.
life. Whereas now I'm like, no, I need to eat that. It's important that I eat that because it's rude to not finish everything on your plate. So I think it's important. It's definitely important for people who are listening. If you feel like you have kind of bad traits about yourself or traits that you don't like, um, give yourself some compassion and understand why it is those traits are apparent in yourself. What happened in your childhood that makes you behave like that? And try and just connect the dots and have some empathy for yourself and understand yourself. And I think the more you can understand why these bad patterns come around, um, the better life you can live. It's about dropping your ego, um, because we're not perfect. And I always think, you know, your parents will screw you up in one way or another, either loving you too much or not loving you enough, or doing
Mm.
too much or doing too little. And it's a case of finding that sweet spot of how can I improve on this and how can I give myself what I didn't receive enough of when I was a child. So I do think it's a really amazing kind of lesson, and I'm still learning more about it because I still don't fully understand it. Um, but I've definitely learned that discipline is not just going to bed at a reasonable time and waking up at a reasonable time. It's what you're eating. Because I always just used to eat what I want. I used to love sweets when I was younger, but my mum used to persuade me that fruit flakes were sweets. So obviously 18 plus, I went to uni. I was eating sweets. I was having so much food that was bad for me. And ultimately, if you can't control your mind to put good food inside your body, that's ultimately going to make you perform better in a mental capacity and in a physical capacity, then you're letting like something else control you, which is not good. And I think if you can have that self discipline, it's really, really important. So that's me on reparenting, but definitely probably people need to do their own research because I haven't explained it that well.
No, you've actually summed it up perfectly, because that's called reparenting, and it's specific to the way that you were brought up by your parents or guardians or whoever. But it's reflection really, which is so key for all of us to do. Because if we don't, how do we build any self awareness? You know, you need to think
Mm.
about the things that either you lacked or the habits and traits that you built in your youth that have led to you being who you are now. I think it's so important to do that self work. So yeah, that's great. So inspiring. I know loads of people are going to be looking into this, having heard from you. So thank you. Um,
Yay. That's what we want. We want to
yeah,
change people's lives. I wish people would speak more about mental health, especially when I was growing up, because it just, again, even as a girl, it wasn't really something that people spoke about. So I think it is amazing, this podcast, like everything it stands for is really inspirational.
thanks, Montana. So the last three of this episode, these are quick fire, so you can just like quick answer because you got to go soon, right?
Yeah, but that's
Okay.
okay. I've got time for quickfire. Although every single time someone asks me quickfire questions, I just have like a blank, and I'm like, eh. So just bear with me. I'm
We'll just
not very good
edit
at these.
something in afterwards.
Yeah.
So if you could pick one thing you've discovered or come across recently that you're particularly excited about, what would it be?
Reparenting.
Nice. Okay, cool. One habit you would recommend to all listeners to incorporate into their day?
Gratitudes.
Nice. How many? You going the big
I'd
10?
start off with five. I'd start off with
Okay.
five.
Okay. And lastly, what's the trait within you that's allowed you to have all the success, however you want to define success? What's the one trait in you that's allowed you to reach that level of success?
Empathy.
Hmm. Amazing.
Definitely empathy. Yeah, honestly, I've had such a laugh, like talking about all this stuff. It's been really amazing to talk to you about everything. I think it's hopefully going to benefit some people.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. Oh, it's been such a pleasure. It has been such a pleasure. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording in a moment, and I can say bye to you properly.
Okay.